Welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to a big cast, or maybe this is a little something different because I'm gonna do a review. Something I never really do, but I recently saw a movie that I gotta review. Gotta review. So, for those who know me, know that I'm a huge martial arts fan. I love martial arts film. Martial arts itself is what got me into film. And so, over the week that I was off, I saw a movie called Crazy Samurai 400 versus 1. And bro, let me tell you, when you see the box art for this thing and you hear the title, you think, man, this is going to be crazy. It says it in the title. It's a great movie. It's alright. It's alright. It's not a bad movie. It's not a great movie. It's a movie, I'd say. So let's get into it. So the movie itself, let me make sure I say this correctly. So yeah, it is an hour and a half. It's a pretty short movie, not that long, and when you watch it, you're gonna like the fact that it's only an hour and a half. So the movie is what it says it is. It's about a samurai who fights 400 people, when in actuality I think it said he on screen kills 588 people. But it's about a samurai who attacks a compound full of mainly students and a couple, well, not a couple, more than a couple because there's 400 people, but a few mercenaries, but it's mainly students who are learning to be samurai. And you know, if this were made into an anime, I think it would have been a whole lot better. Stylistically, it would have been better. The fight scenes would have been better, but they did a live action, and let me just say, I commend them for trying this out. It was a brave thing to do, a great thing to do. The movie was released last year, and I just think they missed the mark on the film. So, let me tell you why. The film is shot, once the fighting starts, the film is shot in one take. So it's 77 minutes, no cuts. Everything's one take. And you're like, man, that's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. But the movie made me think of the Lion King remake that came out a few years ago, the one directed by Jon Favreau. The Lion King is a great movie. The 1991. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's a masterpiece. And this movie made me think of the Lion King remake because it made me think of the fact that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Just because you can do a long fight scene of one guy versus 400 people for 77 minutes with no cuts doesn't mean you should. It's not really entertaining. I can't tell you how many times I was on my phone looking at stuff. Was like, oh, is this over yet? You know? The movie itself came out last year, which is an important fact to remember because the long 77-minute take was shot in 2011. They said 2011. Let me just say, you can tell. You can tell the one take was shot. It kind of looked like it was shot on a GoPro, and you can kind of tell. You could tell it's on a camera, that a camera guy is holding it, and without giving anything away, at the end, you can kind of tell. After he fights his last guy, the camera guy was having a little bit of trouble getting the camera onto a crane, or maybe it was a drone, but it was probably a crane. He took it off his shoulder, was fidgeting with it. You could tell the camera shakes a bit. He puts it on the crane, and then the shot cranes out from over top of the protagonist. And with that being said, I commend them for what they did. especially the main actor and the stunt performers, because all of them, you can tell that they reuse the same stunt guys, and sometimes a guy would get killed, and no matter what, they would have to get killed and then run off scene and die, because then they would have to double back around. Sometimes they would change their wig or their shirt, but after a while, they just don't change anything, and they die off screen. Then they come back. I'm like, yo, you just killed that guy like 3 times already, man. Like, what's going on? But it's an amazing feat for the actor. I commend him. You could tell he was getting tired sometimes, and there's times in the movie where he stops. He gets some water. He drinks the water. He rests for a little bit, and I could tell that rest was real because this dude was working. But when you hear about the movie, and you think 400 versus 1, there wasn't like no crazy choreography or anything like that. It was mainly him doing a couple moves, couple parries, couple moves, then it would kill them. A lot of times it's him facing a group of guys, and they're just waiting. They're trying to fill each other out. And he just hits one guy in the head, hits another guy. Then there'll be a couple moves, boom, 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 back to back, and then it's going back to, them facing off. Couple moves, couple parries. It's pretty much like that for 77 minutes, and boy, as an audience member, you feel it. To be honest, I commend them for what they tried to do with that film, because it's a hard thing to do. And earlier I mentioned that it was shot in 2011, and then the movie came out in 2020. So they had to. It was a independent film, to my understanding. They had to get crowdfunding to finish the 77 minutes of the one take, but then they didn't have enough money to finish the film itself. So it sat on the shelf for all those years. And then finally they got funding to finish. And I thought it was clever how they finished it, because this was shot in 2011, and then 2020 or 2019 they finished it, and then it came out in 2020. So it was 8 years later. And so they managed to just use the same actor, and you could tell he's older, and they used that. They said 8 years later. And then they showed him, and it's the same actor. He obviously looks older. I was like, yo, that's kind of smart, yo. If somebody comes to you, it's like, yo, 8 years later, I'm going to finish your film for you. Here's your funding. But hey, let's use this. Thought it was kind of smart. Instead of just recasting the guy and doing like, a scene right after his fight, they did 8 years later. Fast forward. But yeah, I mean, that was crazy. Samurai 400 versus 1. Would I recommend it for anybody? Not unless you're a fan of martial arts and you want to go into this business. I would recommend it just to watch. Sometimes you should watch things to know not what to do. Just because you could shoot a one take of 77 minutes of him fighting somebody doesn't mean you should, especially if you want it to be consistently entertaining for your audience. Maybe you should, instead of doing one take, do traditional cuts and choreograph different fights. But hey, maybe because it was an independent film, they didn't have as much time. But then again, they did spend months of rehearsal, so maybe you could have just rehearsed traditional fighting and traditional choreography. I don't know. Maybe they wanted to try something. They tried it. They figured it out. They saw that, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this in the future. It's not something I would do. There's plenty of times where I was just sitting there twiddling my thumbs. It was like, is he going to kill somebody? Or is somebody going to do something? But hey, I commend the cast and crew, because it seemed like it was that one camera guy the whole time and that one actor. And so they was on the forefront the whole time, so they had to like really rest. There was one time in the middle of the movie where the protagonist kills a couple of people. Everybody's dead on the scene. He goes off, drinks some water, and he's heaving, and then the scene pans over to other guys who are looking for him, and they talk, and they're talking for like 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm like, I'm guessing the actor, the protagonist, sat down on a chair because the scene was in the alleyway of a bunch of houses. So I'm like, I guess he went in one of those houses, chilled out for a second, maybe went to the bathroom and chilled, and then he came back on scene and started fighting again, which is kind of smart, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Don't take my word for it. Watch Crazy Samurai or watch the Lion King remake and you'll see. But that was just my little review of Crazy Samurai 400 versus 1. Peace. Be creative, my nomads.